What's going on, guys? Greg Bear here of Greg's Halfling Garden channel. In today's video, I want to go over the techniques I follow to prune my peach trees. For one, to keep them compact, because I do live in the city and my peach trees are actually right under my power lines and cable line, so I have to keep them probably under 8 to 10 feet tall. And two, to keep good ventilation between the branches, because having good ventilation between the branches will allow sunlight to come back in to keep moisture levels down, so you won't see a lot of mold, and of course disease won't spread that way as well. So with that being said, let's roll the intro. The tools needed for pruning are pretty simple. You need a good pair of pruners. These are the Fisker's pruners. I think they're like 10 bucks at Walmart. They're pretty good. They'll pretty much chop through anything 3/4 of an inch and under. And then you're going to need some kind of disinfectant. I like to use a 5% solution of bleach. You can use rubbing alcohol. I'm sure there's actually a commercial agricultural spray you can use for this as well to disinfect your pruners, but I just use bleach because once you go between trees and another tree, you don't want to use the pruners without disinfecting them, because you could transfer disease from one tree to the other. Even though, for the most part, a lot of these diseases that are on trees will transfer anyways because the spores will travel through the wind, but it's just a little safety precaution. So your solution and then some paper towels to wipe the pruners out every time you go between trees. And of course, you're going to need a ladder if your trees are that tall, or maybe even if you didn't want to go with these, you could have a pole pruner, which I do have, but most of my trees are under 10 feet tall, so me on a ladder with these pruners is good enough. All right, that's everything we need. Let's get to the first peach tree and get this started. If you guys haven't done any pruning on peach trees before, it's a fairly simple idea. It's pretty much like art. First off, you have to make the V, which I already have here, the two main trunks. And then in between, you don't want a lot of branches in here. You want to keep this very wide open so the peaches get full sunlight on the fruits, because that's going to help them ripen and keep disease down as well. And the second part is going around looking at the branches. You don't want any branches that are parallel with the ground or below, because they're going to tend to sag like this. And of course, that's great deer food at this height, and there's always a chance that the branches are going to hit another branch as well if they sag too much like that. Look around your tree, look at the spacing. Like, there's a lot of branches going on right here, so I'll probably trim this one off, trim one of these off. Got this wild little whip going over here, I'll get rid of that. I'll probably get rid of this on the interior here to keep this open. Yeah, it's pretty simple. I pretty much have everything pruned off 5 feet and below, just because I do have a lot of deer problems. That'll help keep them away from here. And while you're in here, definitely prune off any dead branches. And of course, if you're not familiar with trimming fruit trees at all, definitely leave a little bit of nub on the end of the branch. Don't trim it all the way to the trunk. Trim the nub down to like here, and let that seal up and dry up a little bit, and then trim it to the branch. If you do it the whole way first, there's a really big chance you're going to infect the tree right here. I don't know the whole science behind it, but that's just what I've always followed after reading a lot of books on it. All right, let's do a little bit of trimming on this tree. It's not going to be too exciting. There's only like maybe 10 branches that I'm going to take off this tree, but hopefully in the next tree we'll get some more stuff out of it. One tree down, 7 to go. And one last thing about pruning, of course, like me, like I said, I live in the city, so I try to limit the height of my tree because it's gonna touch the power lines eventually. So of course I top the tree off, which is basically just topping off all the branches, which makes it bush out more on the bottom. And of course, if you didn't know this about fruit trees, especially peach trees, they only produce fruit on the green branches, which are under 2 or 3 years old, and after that they turn all woody and brown, and then they're just a branch with leaves on them. They don't produce peaches on them. So eventually, if you didn't prune these, you'd have a 20-foot tall tree that only produces peaches on the top part, which would be super annoying to have to pick those off, especially since peaches are super soft. You can't use like an apple claw thing on the pole. You'd have to hand pick those somehow to get them down without bruising them, which would be totally inconvenient. So that's another good reason why you want to top your tree off like that. All right, let's move to the next tree. The next tree I got is my Colander Red Rocket peach tree. Like I said, this one is the best tasting peach tree I have out of all of them. And it's actually designed to stay fairly compact width-wise, but it will still grow 20 feet tall if we don't keep it topped off. So we're definitely going to top off at least a foot off of this because it is fairly close to the power line right there, as you can see. And then clean it up a little bit. This one, since it is a compact tree, it will get really bushy on the inside and won't be a lot of cross ventilation in between here. So, but I do have a fairly nice V already in here, and the branches are just going straight up. So I've got nice cross ventilation there. I'll just probably thin this out a little bit right in here and over here, and of course top it off on the top a little bit. Some other things to consider when you're pruning your trees. So if you do happen to prune your tree probably more than about 20%, you might have to adjust your annual fertilizing and fertilize it a little less to give it time to catch up and not over stress it with too much fertilizer. Another thing, you definitely always want to pick up everything you prune, because any of the old branches might harbor diseases that you might be trying to get rid of while you're pruning, and also old fruit, which definitely harbors a lot of disease and mold on it. Especially with peach trees like mine, they do tend to get brown rot, and the brown rot is actually why I got rid of all the wood chips around my trees, because brown rot is like a spore and it can live in wood chips, it can live in the old branches and all the peaches and the pits that fall on the ground. So you definitely have to pick all that up if you're trying to limit your disease problem. Alright, for the rest of these trees, I'm just going to throw it on time lapse. You guys probably get the idea by now. It's just all about creating a V with a lot of vertical branches with a lot of cross ventilation in between. So I've got 4 peach trees right here lined up. I'm going to throw my camera right on the back of my truck bed here and go to town with these things. The next one's a big girl, so probably spend a lot of time on that one. One of the branches is already touching one of the cable lines, so got to take that down quick. It's also only about 6 inches away from my power line, so got to work on that soon. Let's do it. You guys enjoyed this quick tutorial on how to prune your peach trees. Now, you don't have to completely follow everything I do. I'm sure there's a lot of different variables for everybody. Like, I have to have certain size constraints because I'm in the city and where the power lines are and all that stuff. That might not apply to you. You might be in the country, you can just kind of let your things grow wild. You might be able to let them go 20 feet tall. You might be okay with that. You might be able to grow 20 feet wide. You might be okay with that too. But where I am, this is what I have to do. So I always take that in consideration. We're not all the same. Every little garden area is different. You might have a different microclimate where you are. Your soil might be different. Everything might be different. So just use what I said as a guide towards pruning your trees, how you want to prune them, and how it works for your specific microclimate and your needs. And with that being said, if you like this video, definitely give it a like. If you want to stay in the know for all my future uploads, turn on that notification bell and make sure it's set to notifications on always. And of course, definitely consider subscribing to the Greg's Halfling family and become one of my Halflings. And I hope to see you guys all on my next adventure. Greg Bear out.